Welcome into the Inside Slant here on the Sports Objective as we get ready for college football for a big day tomorrow. Obviously, we've got games I know going on tonight. It's going on right now as we speak. But we got a big day tomorrow. And with us right now, we have Kyle from LaGrange Barber on the road again like Willie Nelson. How are you, sir?
What's going on, Dave? On the road between Kinston and LaGrange, so not much traveling here. But just left my mom's on the way to the house, joining you all via the Jeep.
All right. And we don't have Animal Hawk anymore, the Road Warriors, but we still have Kyle. So that's great. Bubba Rosenbaum, what's up, dude?
Just sitting here watching a little bit of the SMU Tulane game. It's been a pretty good ball game so far.
I did some shopping at Wally World, so got back in time to do the show. How are you? And we have a great game tomorrow. Hard to believe. Duke and NC State, the first time since 2013 they're getting together, right, Bubba?
Yep, Duke and NC State will meet tomorrow at Carter Finley Stadium. Like you said, first time in 7 years. Hard to believe. But right now, to preview that matchup, very excited to have with us for the first time talking football. We've had this guy on from Pack Pride before, Cory Smith, to talk about East Carolina and NC State baseball. But Cory, welcome into the show.
Thank you guys for having me. How are y'all doing?
Doing great. As I was saying pre-show to you, I just can't believe that. And I know the commissioner, I know the reasons why they say it, but there's no reason why two schools are that close apart as far as football. I think they should play twice in basketball and all that. But anyway, hard to believe it's been 7 years. I remember that last game, and it's just like, wow, that was 7 years ago. I know Dave Doran and David Cutcliffe are really good friends. They obviously would like to play each other more. And what are your thoughts? Obviously, being from Pack Pride, I know Dave Doran has made his opinions very clear.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those games, not just from the standpoint, just the game, in proximity to your school. Also, like we were talking about before we jumped on here, just the recruiting aspect of it too. You want to play every school within the state. You want to be able to have, players within the state be able to, especially even this year, they're not able to do that because you're not able to have recruits come into campus at all. So it's a very interesting dynamic. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it should be at least, every recruiting cycle should at least be able to have a chance to play them. So I would say at least every 3 to 4 years, be able to play these teams. And I think, you're seeing a little bit of, people getting excited about the removal of the divisions. And I think that's the way to do it. So we'll see what the future holds. But I think this season has obviously been a little bit more exciting for the ACC. So upping it to, 8, 9, upping it to 9 or 10 games in conference, I think would be what would open things up for them.
And the very fact that I know Coach Doran said, I mean, you've got guys that they go their whole entire career at NC State and they don't play Duke. And I know that David Cutcliffe feels the same way. They're close friends. They keep it, and I read where on WRALSportsFan.com a couple of days ago, they had an article about the very fact that I didn't know the two of them were very close friends and they actually watch each other's games. I didn't realize that, but that was something I learned this week.
Yeah, I think Cutcliffe said earlier this week that even though he keeps up with them, keeps close tab. He was like, give him a lot.
Yeah, Kyle, did you want to ask a question?
I lost Cory's audio. Cory, lost your audio. Hopefully, it'll come back in clear. Yeah. Cory, you look at NC State's offense so far this year. Tim Beck comes in as OC. The offense is putting up big numbers so far. Just talk about the development of the offense under Tim Beck and I, last year, if I remember correctly, you guys kind of struggled offensively, and Beck seems to have things rolling.
Yeah, struggled last year is a nice way of putting it. This past year, 2019, NC State was one of the worst, not only in the ACC, but in the country as well in scoring offense. We're seeing the team, not only because of the fact that you've had Tim Beck come in and the type of success that he's had, but you're also seeing just the development of Devin Leary and what he's been able to do since he's been able to step in. He missed the first game, obviously, but he's played really well the last 2 games. Struggled in the second half against UVA, but was going to more conservative play calling and having the rain falling as well, which doesn't passing game. But you've also seen offense go a little bit more run heavy at times. And I think that was something that they struggled with last year. Had a good offense. You had a lot of playmakers, but they just didn't utilize them in the ways that are going to make, be able to drive the team down the field at all. So you're seeing Zonda Knight, Bam Knight step up in a big way this year. You're seeing Ricky Person finally healthy and what he can do in this offense. And Jordan Houston is a nice back that's, kind of a change of pace back as well. So the offense is just utilizing the pieces that it has a lot better than they have in the past. And I think that's one of the biggest things that Tim Beck has been able to do is kind of, get the run going first and then run, have a bunch of play action passes that they've been able to utilize with Devin Leary so far.
Yeah, Cory, you talked about Devin Leary. He really lit it up in that game. Drawing a blank, Pittsburgh, right after the Virginia Tech loss, which was really not as close as the 45-24 final. You went up to Pittsburgh against a ranked Panthers club, and Devin Leary lit it up. And then last week against a very solid Virginia team, you took it to them in Charlottesville. And in that game, you talked about how Leary had his struggles, but then the running game with Bam Knight really rose to the forefront.
Yeah, the big thing, definitely, again, going back 2 weeks ago,
Hey, Cory, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Sorry, we lost your audio
you're cutting
there
out
for
a lot,
probably
Cory.
6 to 8. Yeah, and it's pretty consistent. Is there any way you can join here in maybe 2 or 3 minutes as quickly as you can from your laptop?
Let me see. Hold on. I can try to step outside really quickly too. Hold on.
Bear with us one moment, folks, while Cory attempts to get a better signal. But here in just a few minutes, we'll be joined by Damien Sordelett of the News in Advance as we'll talk about Liberty, a 3-point favorite tomorrow at the Carrier Dome against the Orange.
Yeah, let's see. Is that picking up any better there?
So far, so good, Cory.
Okay.
But do you need Bubba to repeat the question?
Oh no, actually, I mean, I remember exactly what he was saying was, the fact that Devin Leary's game against Pittsburgh was not just great in the sense that he had as many yards as he had or as many touchdowns as he had, but that game-winning drive was something that NC State had not seen since Russell Wilson, or actually Mike Glennon, the last one that had a game-winning drive. Hadn't had one in several years. So that was kind of that was the big for that one, and that was the selling point of just how good he could be as a quarterback as well.
Cory, the Pack off to a 3-1 start in ACC play. If you beat Duke, you'd be 4-1. When is the last time NC State started off 4-1 in ACC play?
Not gonna lie, you haven't looked that up. I should probably look that up, but yeah, I think the last time that they won five games was Bradley Chubb being in the lineup. I believe 2 years ago I think they went 6-2 overall. So it's been a little while since they've gotten off to that hot of a start. It also depends on if you include Notre Dame in that year, 2017, but they're not actually included in the ACC. So yeah, this would be a remarkable start for NC State, in particular, given the struggles that they had last year. There's just a 4-8 overall season last year, 1-7 in the ACC. So this is already at this point already tripled the output of ACC wins last year. And they knew they were going to have to be able to compete against ACC competition all year long, even come away with above 500 schedule or 500 record, which is going to be really difficult to do this year for any ACC team.
And Tim Beck, with his background with Ohio State, et cetera, then down to Texas, what's the thoughts down there? I would expect Coach Beck to, if not this year, if the offense continues down this path, to get some head coaching offers from Group of 5 schools before long.
Yeah, and there's been some talk about that, especially on our boards over on PackPride.com. Our boards, a shout out. Actually got a question about that earlier today, and one of the things I think is, he did move away from having the play calling duties last year for Texas before he ended up leaving. I think he was going to be promoted to more being the QB's coach last year before he ended up leaving and going to NC State. So this is kind of a rebirth for him. Obviously he's always consistent offense, but this was the first time he's really proven, like, hey, this is what my offense can do, how big it can change the program. Because last year NC State, again, we go struggles that they had over, and now they're averaging almost 35 points per game. That's such a huge step up from what they were doing last year. I think it ends up opening them up more to offensive coordinator positions at maybe other schools or the other Power 5 schools, like you were mentioning, big schools. But I wouldn't be surprised if it opened up some Group of 5 head coaching opportunities. But
guys, we got anything else for Cory?
I think you're still on mute, Dave.
Yeah, Cory, go ahead, Dave, if you had something. I didn't realize you were trying to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I did. But anyway, Cory, I had one final question for you. As far as recruiting is concerned, I know with the Tar Heels being down the road and being number 5 in the country, I've heard a lot of talking heads talk about how Mac Brown's come in. And I know Dave Doran in the past has done a nice job of recruiting the state of North Carolina. And I'm hearing now it's return of the Mac, and now that he's getting all the in-state recruits. Have you seen that with following the program very close with recruiting? Has it hurt NC State at all?
I mean, yeah, I think it hurt programs with NC State because of the fact that NC State consistently is one of the programs really has to compete with USC, because Wake Forest and Duke are looking for a different type of player for the most part. Every once in a while, they'll land bigger name players, and of course, but NC State was breaking up when it came to talent, in particular. Back in the 2004 arrived, and then it took away a few recruits from NC State last year, and part of what is hurting NC State is just the fact that they went 4-8 last season. I mean, you were going to be fighting a uphill battle regardless of who you were going against, and then the fact that Mac Brown had a good class in 2020, followed up with a lot of big recruits in State beginning of this year, but State's been able to recover, been able to a lot of guys that have a lot of 4-star talent with the state of North Carolina. They also landed Laughlin earlier this year, a quarterback in Georgia that's one of the top-ranked quarterbacks in the country. Also add in some big name players that they've added from just outside of the state as well. They feel really excited about. So there's still a lot of players left at class. I think they still have 6 spots open, and they're currently ranked number 29 overall in the country with their recruiting class. So yes, it was a very big talking point early on. With the fact that Mac Brown was just bringing in all these big name recruits inside of the state of North Carolina. But things have kind of come back down to earth. The UNC is currently, I believe, according to 24/7 Sports, currently ranked as the number 3 overall class in the ACC, and NC State is number 4. There's a very large distance between them when it comes to looking at the ACC overall. NC State is not very far behind because of the fact that they took their time and recruited a lot of the guys that they really felt like were better fits for their program on down the line.
Cory, last thing I had for you, taking a look at Duke, the Blue Devils, very rough start of the year, and they lost all 3 of those ball games by at least 2 touchdowns. But they were competitive against Virginia Tech and took the Hokies pretty much down to the wire, 38-31, and then went up to the Carrier Dome. And even though it wasn't a real blowout in terms of the score, they put up well over 600 yards against the Orange. And that ground attack, they had 2 backs top 160 yards, which was just crazy. I had not realized that until I was preparing for this. Jackson and Durant. So just talk about the Duke offense that has looked much better the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I talked to Adam Rowe, who works for 7 Sports earlier this week. He works over the Devil's Den, and one of the big things that he was saying that's helped for the last 2 weeks is the fact that they haven't necessarily cut down on the amount of turnovers, but they haven't let the turnovers kill them, which was one of the big issues that they were going through early on. The defense has actually been really strong overall. scoring defense looks at 30 in the country because of the fact that Duke has had 19 season, 10 fumbles lost, and interceptions, one coming from a wide receiver. They've had 19 turnovers overall. They had 25 all year, and they're only 5 games into the season so far this year. So the big thing for the Duke offense is if they can continue to cut down on those turnovers, they can find a way to run the ball again against NC State. I think that makes this offense a little bit different than what we've seen in the first 5 weeks. Be a little bit different, a little bit closer to what we saw against Syracuse last week. So the big thing for NC State is they have to shut down the running game, and they have to force Chase Bryce to throw the ball, because we've seen when Chase Bryce throws the ball, he has 5 touchdowns, 8 interceptions this year. It had 4 turnovers last week in one game. So if NC State is able to continue that success and be able to force Chase Bryce into bad situations, then I think this is a lot different game for NC State. They end up 4-1 after this game.
Cory, thank you for joining us. Where can people find your
Thank you.
work, and where are you at on social media?
Obviously, everybody can find it over at packpride.com, part of 24/7 Sports Network. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at @Cory Smith. Cory is spelled as Cory, as you can see across the top here. Thank you guys for spelling it correctly. It gets misspelled a lot.
And Cory, enjoyed it very much. Good luck to the Wolfpack tomorrow, and we'll have you again on very soon.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Y'all have a good one.
All right, Cory Smith there of Pack Pride, and now we're going up to Lynchburg, Virginia. Damien Sordelett of the News and Events. Damien, great to have you back on. The Liberty Flames 4-0. I'll tell you one thing. I told the guys, I love your coach, Hugh Freeze, and he's getting it done there with Liberty.
Yeah, he certainly is, and he's been able to do it a different way than you would think accustomed to in his past. Like when you go back to when he coached at Ole Miss, and even that 1 year stay at Arkansas State, he's been committed to running the ball and maintaining time of possession this year. Liberty's 8th in the nation in time of possession, over 34 minutes a game. They're 7th in the nation in rushing yards. And when you think of a Hugh Freeze-led up-tempo offense, you think exciting vertical plays down the field, a lot of throwing, a lot of RPOs. They still have that, but they're being very consistent this year because the defense just doesn't have the depth that's needed to consistently go at an up-tempo pace, because they still need more depth at linebacker and need more depth in the secondary. So we're seeing an evolution of a head coach, and as he's adapted with this team, they're adapting with him. And like you said, they've gotten off to a 4-0 start and face arguably their toughest test of the season so far with Syracuse.
Damien, are you surprised to see, obviously Hugh Freeze, veteran coach, and yeah, I don't remember how many years into the FBS journey Liberty is now, maybe 5 or 6. But are you surprised to see the program evolve that fast, where you guys are undefeated on the year and favored at Syracuse?
Yeah, this is actually year 3 of FBS. 2018 under Turner Gill was the first year at FBS, and then you look at the commitment that Liberty's made to football. They've spent, I want to say, it's probably close to $100 million just in facilities within the last 5 years, with the upgrade of Williams Stadium, the new indoor practice facility, the upgraded operations center, and then they just renovated the west side of the stadium. They've put a significant investment into the program, and when you have kids who come and check out the university and see the facilities, it's easy to get good kids on board. And I would say the success this year is a credit to the recruiting. They've really focused on defense. If you look at the defensive line, they are stacked at the edge. They have really 6 bona fide pass rushers off the edge, and only one's a senior. So they have a lot of youth there at that position. Inside, same thing. Only 1 or 2 upperclassmen, and a lot of youngsters who are getting playing time. So what they've done is they've identified that defense was the priority it needed to be, and they've really upgraded that side of the ball. Because if you go back to the 2 transition years for Liberty, going to FBS 2017 and 2018, their pass defense was fairly comparable and rather consistent, but they couldn't stop the run to save their lives. They gave up rushing yards in chunks. And now we've seen, running the ball against them is a little bit more challenging when you're able to consistently rotate 8 to 10 guys who are bona fide Division I athletes. And I think that's been a big help for them. And it doesn't help this year that, the 4 opponents they played have a combined record of 1-11. They've caught a Western Kentucky team that apparently is not playing up to standards this year in Conference USA. FIU has been hit by COVID issues, and I believe has only played 2 games. FCS program North Alabama is playing its second game this weekend, and then we know how bad Louisiana Monroe is, 0-5, and just can't do anything right, it seems like. So Liberty's taking advantage of the teams they need to play, and I think this test against Syracuse will be really the litmus test to see if this program is legit for real this year.
Yeah, I agree with you. Syracuse, not a world beater, but by far, on paper anyway, the best team the Flames have played.
Yeah, absolutely agree. We're talking about Liberty being the best team. Syracuse being the best team that Liberty's faced up to this point. I was looking at the rest of the schedule, and certainly much tougher than the first 4 games. And taking a look at some of those, and you still have a game at Virginia Tech, and you also go to NC State. We were just talking with Cory Smith a moment ago, and then you also go to Coastal Carolina, who's also a 4-0 start. So 4 of those last 6 games for the Flames are on the road. What's your take on the remaining schedule?
It definitely gets more challenging, and you just alluded to 4 teams. Coastal Carolina, I believe, should be ranked after their thrilling win Wednesday night over Louisiana, and that was an instant classic the way those 2 teams played. NC State's turned the corner. We know how good Virginia Tech is, even in the loss, put up a really good challenge against North Carolina, a top 10 team. And then Syracuse, even as depleted as the Orange are, I mean, they're likely without their top 3 or 4 running backs for this one. Andre Sisco's out for the year and is already declared for the NFL draft. Tommy DeVito's starting and probably won't play. And then the offensive line is really decimated for the Orange. I mean, I think, from what Chris Carlson from the Syracuse Post-Standard told me, they've had to convert, a tight end fullback into an offensive lineman because that's how deep they are. That's the lack of depth they have there on the line. So, but there is the discrepancy of Syracuse recruiting at this level, Liberty's recruiting right now at this level. So obviously Syracuse has been recruiting at a higher level, so even their backups are probably somewhat better than Liberty starters. So
let me tell you something, Damien. There's something to be said for winning, and you guys are used to winning, and Syracuse isn't. And sometimes the product is better than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, and I believe, if Liberty gets off to a hot start, this one, that will probably help tip the tide. I'll go back to last year's opener. Liberty was in the red zone on 2 of its first 3 drives. No points. It should have been 10-0. Alex Probert off the upright on, I believe, a 30-yard field goal. And then Joshua Mack fumbled inside the 5-yard line. Liberty should have been up 10-0. And then, the way the defense was playing, momentum would have been on Liberty's side. I think Liberty needs to come down, score on its first drive, prove it can actually score against this team. And then, like Kyle, you alluded to, the momentum will be on Liberty's side because, they haven't had to deal with these COVID-related issues that plague Syracuse. They haven't had to deal with the litany of injuries. They haven't lost this year, like you mentioned. Syracuse is 1-3. So combine that and all, if Liberty can get ahead and play with the lead, that's only going to bode well for them to try to score the first win over an ACC program in program history.
Yeah, and obviously it would be a huge moment for Liberty to get the win up at the Carrier Dome over Syracuse. And a fun fact for you, that was East Carolina's first ever win over a top 25 team, not over an ACC. Yeah, Syracuse is Big East in those days, but back in '91, that was our first road win against the top 25 opponents.
Yeah, I think I remember that. I mean, those were some good Syracuse teams back in the day. Back when, the Big East was Syracuse, Miami, Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech more so latter 90s, early 2000s versus, during those early 90s. And I will mention this. Liberty, as you mentioned, 3-point favorite. I've also seen 2.5-point favorite. This will only be the second time Liberty will enter a game against a Power 5 program as a favorite. The other time was against Rutgers last year. And say what you want about Rutgers. That I was kind of shocked by that too, and like equally as shocked with this one. So it'll be interesting to see if those players who were on last year's team learn from. Okay, we're favored to win this one. We have to live up to the standard, and you can't walk into like they did last year with Rutgers, walk in and think they're going to win.
Damien, do you know how much Hugh Freeze makes a year? How big is his contract?
Well, Liberty as a public school doesn't have to release that, and we haven't seen the latest tax returns. I would say it's probably with his latest contract extension, which he signed after this past year. I would say it's probably in the $2 to $2.5 million range. It's I've been told it's very comparable to some of the higher paid G5 coaches in the country.
Yeah, that would be upper echelon group of 5, and even comparable to lower tier Power 5. So that's interesting. Yeah, you guys will be able to hold on to him longer than I thought with him making that kind of money. That's interesting.
Yeah, and you think about that. If he has some overtures from other schools, like for instance, next week Liberty plays Southern Miss. Southern Miss is where Hugh Freeze went to school. It's where he and his wife Jill met. I mean, does he think about going there if they offer him? Or does he think, oh, I have Malik Willis for another year. Do I want to, at least see what he can do his second year in the system and hopefully not dealing with a left elbow injury that he's dealing with right now? I mean, that's a possibility because Willis has been really dynamic for them in 3 games. Missed the game against North Alabama. His throwing ability has really improved this year under the tutelage of quarterbacks coach Ken Austin. He's been able to throw the ball extremely well, and the biggest deal for him was he likes to run out of the pocket and try to find receivers that way. What he's been able to do now is he gets his base set. I mean, the issue before was he wasn't getting his hips and his shoulders aligned when he was throwing, and that led to a lot of errant passes, high, wide, you name it. Now that he's been able to find ways to reassert his base, get those squared up, you're seeing him become a much more complete quarterback and a much more polished passer. And that's what's made Liberty so much more dynamic, is that now you add in the throwing game with him. Now, if you put a spy on him and he reads it, he knows he can go to the air because there's going to be a one-on-one matchup somewhere. And I think that's what's helped this Liberty offense get going. I mean, the rushing yards are there, 250 yards a game as a team. He's averaging 115 by himself. But the throwing game is going to be a big key, and especially against the Syracuse defense that preys on interceptions. I believe they have 8 as a team, and they lead the nation in turnover margin at plus 2.5. His ability to take care of the ball, be accurate, will help them, especially being able to run against a team that has allowed 300 some yards per game in the last 2 games against Georgia Tech and Duke. That'll be a big key for him.
Yeah, Damien, I did not realize that Malik Willis was battling that elbow injury, but I noticed some of his inconsistencies throwing the football, but like you said, he's certainly done it at times. I think it was the 36-34 win over FIU in Lynchburg, 24 out of 30 for nearly 300 yards. He took care of the ball that day. And then that season opener against Western Kentucky on the road, carried the ball over 20 times for nearly 170 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, he showcased in those first 2 weeks what he can do with both his right arm and his feet. The big key with that was when he suffered the elbow injury, it was late. It was on the 3rd down run in the 4th quarter against FIU, and he didn't come back in the game. He's wearing this pretty big protective brace on his left elbow. And the problem was, and this goes back to mechanics, as he was throwing, he was keeping his elbow in. And so that wasn't allowing his hips to rotate through on his delivery, and that was throwing things off. So he said the game last week against ULM, which Liberty won 40-7, and the offense didn't need to do much because the special team scored 3 touchdowns. The defense had 11 3 and out on 14 ULM drives. He didn't have to do as much. So they're able to work on his mechanics, so that way his elbow isn't tucked into his body as much. So that way he's a little bit more free, and it allowed him to get hit. And I can't stress how much for a quarterback it is coming back from an injury, how it feels to get hit and then get back up and say, okay, this didn't hurt. I'm good to go. So he needed that game. And I think having that game, and even though he struggled with an interception, no touchdown passes, I think that helped. So having some confidence going to Syracuse is a must when you're playing a team as good as the Qs can be.
Yeah, Damien, we really appreciate the visit as the 4-0 Flames will go to the Carrier Dome tomorrow to do battle with a 1-3 Orange of Syracuse. Noon kickoff on FSN. Before we let you go, if you would, just tell folks where they can follow you and read your work.
Well, you got my name and my the publication correctly there on the screen at the News in Advance, newsadvance.com. On my screen here, I put my Twitter handle at Damien Sordelett. Feel free to give me a follow. And guys, thanks for having me on. It's always a blast, and can't wait to do it again.
All right. Thanks, Damien.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Damien.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it very much. All right, Bubba, I know that this guy is he might as well be a part of Sports Objective. We have him on. Appreciate you very much coming on, one of our favorite guests, right, Bubba?
Yeah, Jeff Allen from the Knightline Sports Network. Jeff, welcome back.
Hey, it's great to be here as always, guys. Always enjoy being on with you.
2-1 UCF, a 3-point favorite going on the road to take on Memphis, who's looking to bounce back as well after a loss to SMU, 3:30 on ABC. But before we dive into that matchup, Jeff, just talk a little about that game with Tulsa. The Knights got off to a 23-5 lead. Tulsa, very much like East Carolina, had issues protecting the football, but they were able to come back and really put together a tremendous second half.
It was like a carbon copy from a year ago in Tulsa with the Golden Hurricane getting the comeback victory there. It's a situation where the Knights, first of all, you got to give Tulsa a lot of credit. You could see this team last year starting to turn the corner, and they've built themselves a really good defense. They have a secondary that can lock down. They can play man-to-man. And then they have a beast of a linebacker, Zaven Collins, who's, leading the nation in tackles for loss. And, the way they can lock down the passing game allows him to be a playmaker. So I think first and foremost, Tulsa deserves a lot of credit. In fact, Kelly Hines of the Tulsa World was on my AAC report this week. And, I asked her, what does Tulsa have that has UCF's number? And she says, well, Tulsa's offense, their goal is to be like UCF's offense. Now, they just don't have the talent and the depth of UCF on that side of the ball just yet. But defensively, they're used to practicing against that type of offensive philosophy, if you will. So, first of all, I would say it was a big thing. The other part of that is that, UCF continues to shoot itself in the foot with offensive penalties. And you don't follow up a 19 penalty game with an 18 penalty game. The evidence suggests the right corrective measures were not being put into place to fix that problem. So hopefully they're using that as a bye week to get that situated. The offensive line has been a bit of a problem, not just with the penalties, but with pass protection. The good news is that Parker Boudreaux, their best offensive lineman, he's been out with concussion protocol, and he is traveling with the team this week, which suggests he will play, which will be a big boost for the Knights. I think one of the things that UCF again ran into the same problem this last game is they're not playing fast consistently. And I think that's also contributing to some of the hiccups on the offensive line where, these guys are used to going up and snapping in just a few seconds. And I think they're out of rhythm. They've got to learn how to correct that. But I think that's contributing to part of the problem.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Well, I was going to say, you mentioned being out of rhythm and slowing it down at times. Do you think that has anything to do with a lot of the false start penalties you guys were having earlier in the year? Have you guys been slowing it down some because of that?
Yeah, I think that's certainly a contributing factor to that situation. And again, they're having their problems. I don't know exactly what it is that why they're not playing fast all the time like they typically have done in the past. If it's a new wrinkle that Josh Heupel's trying out, I don't know. But yeah, I think that definitely is part of the false start problem.
And Jeff, how are things there in Orlando with the team? Are people feeling still confident with everything going on? As far as I know, there's all the issues with COVID, and I know your fan base is so spoiled now that having a loss. Are they worried now having one loss of the season? Right now, one loss for us would be an absolute miracle.
Yeah. Well, you look at this game coming up, and basically this is a playoff game in some respects, because one of these teams is going to come out with 2 losses, and that's going to be tough ground to make up in the conference race to be in the 1 or 2 slot to go to the championship game. So I think a lot of folks are worried. The Knights have a 13-game winning streak in this series against Memphis. They've won all the big games of late. The odds say at some point Memphis is going to win a game in this, and Knight fans are hoping this is not the year it happens.
When's the last time UCF has lost 2 in a row? Does that go back to the year you guys were winless?
That goes back to 6 and 7, the 6 and 7 year of Scott Frost's first year.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, gotcha.
Taking a look at Memphis, Jeff, I referenced their loss down at SMU and them looking to bounce back. Prior to that SMU game, they had been off for 4 weeks between Arkansas State and that trip to Dallas. And right after that, under some circumstances, they may have liked to have an open date before taking on UCF, but I would imagine they probably wanted to keep playing football this year after having such a long time off between games. But nonetheless, they had 2 weeks between SMU and UCF. What's your take on this Memphis ball club first year of Ryan Silverfield?
Yeah, and that's an interesting aspect that you bring up too, with the amount of downtime the Tigers have had, and you could definitely tell that rust affected them in the first half of at least the first quarter of the football game against SMU before they kind of got their legs underneath them. And I think the fact that they do run such a fast-paced offense in their own right, that kind of helped them get back into the swing of things a little bit. Brady White is certainly a guy that can fling it around the yard. You look at the quarterbacks in this conference, and he is certainly one of the best ones in the conference. And Coxie is a tremendous wide receiver. I think the fact that they lost Kenny Gainwell opting out was a big blow to them, because he brought so much to that team, not just in the running game but in the passing game as well. But make no mistake about it, they will definitely move the football. Defensively, I think will be a bit more of a challenge for them if the Knights can not shoot themselves in the foot. I think that will be the key as far as that goes. But definitely, Ryan Silverfield, what is he's been with the program. He succeeds Mike Norvell after he goes to Florida State. The rumors of the party bus after the Arkansas State game. Does he have control of the team? Is that a badge that he has to wear fairly or unfairly? That's certainly something you have to look at. But as far as continuity goes, keeping it in house with his promotion. We'll have to see. I think he still has to start to write his own way.
Yeah, no doubt, Jeff. And
I don't know if we lost Kyle there. Jeff, as far as the program is concerned, with looking ahead, I know the coaches are not looking ahead to these matchups, but you're talking about the conference race. I just want to get your take on, you look at the likes of Tulsa, they're different teams that are coming in. That was kind of like the surprise so far. We wondered how Philip Montgomery and the crew out there in Tulsa would do this year. He's probably I would argue, which is the one that's been on the hot seat. I think that it's not as warm as it was preseason, but what are your take of the conference race so far?
It's I think this is going to be what 2020 brings us, more uncertainty. It's like, how it's going to be very, very hard to predict. Navy's got, 2 conference wins out of the gate, and, they've been up and down so far this season. so far it's been good for them in conference. Out of conference, not so much. You look at Tulane; they're in a tie ball game with SMU here at the half. SMU right now is undefeated on the season. I think this is becoming a very wide open situation. While I mentioned that, a team getting a second loss out of the UCF Memphis game is behind the 8 ball. Yes, it's a bigger hurdle to overcome, but we might be seeing where I don't know that anybody's going to run the table in conference. And if you can hold and not have any more than 2 losses, you still may have a chance.
No, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I mean, Cincinnati and SMU, SMU's got to get past Tulane tonight, and Cincinnati has looked good so far, but they've looked beatable. I mean, they're undefeated, but Cincinnati does not look like a team that's going to steamroll everybody. They have the talent to do so, but so far they've played well, but haven't looked unbeatable.
And their schedule has been, and their schedule's been a little bit, it's been a really strong schedule they faced, and they're hanging their hat on their defense, which rightfully, that's what they do there. Their defense is outstanding. But yeah, offensively, I think they're challenged a bit. They may not be, quote unquote, the strong team come at the end of this thing.
Yeah. And what is the expectations? I mean, obviously, well, let me reword that. Obviously, the expectations for you guys is to win the conference and to go to a New Year's Six bowl. But what is going to make the fan base happy? You guys have become spoiled there, going back to the Josh Heupel days, and you're Josh Heupel's there now. I'm sorry. You know what I mean?
Scott Frost.
Scott Frost, Nebraska's coach, that guy. Going back to the Scott Frost days, you guys became spoiled. So what is the expectations for your fans? What will they accept? I mean, what won't be a disappointment? I mean, is anything beyond winning the conference a disappointment for UCF at this point? Can you guys handle not winning the conference 2 years in a row?
I think for this fan base, that is going to be a disappointment. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's right. You could still have a successful season. Again, they won 10 games last year. How many teams would take 10 wins every year? Everybody raise your hand, right?
Exactly.
You get to where what is it? Tim Brando likes to call it the lunatic fringe. And we have a certain amount of that in the UCF fan base, and it is unrealistic to think they're going to win the conference, go undefeated every year. It's great to have those expectations because we were winless just a few years ago, so I'd rather be on this side of it than that side of it for sure. But yeah, I think if they do not make it to the conference championship game, there will be some disappointment, and there has been some people that have been even calling for Josh Heupel to be fired, which I think is ridiculous.
Oh my God. Are you serious?
Yeah, now, I will not say that's happening in the media, but that is happening in the fan base. It's not the overwhelming percentage.
You tell those 25-year-olds to grow up a little bit.
yeah, especially the people that just jumped on the bandwagon. Remarkably so. Yeah. Can we be critical of Josh Heupel in some of the way they have played in the last 2 seasons? Absolutely. But that's, for shows like this to do, that we break it down and kind of go into that kind of depth. But no, to say he's terrible as a football coach is absolutely absurd. And I think that, if they win 9 games, I still consider, you got to keep the train moving. Keep the train moving. Yep. You don't want it to step, you don't want it to be a 6-win season, but then, but there you go. It's just one of those cases where, when teams become spoiled, the expectations are high, which you want, but sometimes they get just a little unrealistic.
Yeah. And there's no divisions to win this year. You're fighting. Second is just as good as first. Because 1 and 2 play for the conference championship. So at this point, you're really not even trying to win the regular season. You're just trying to finish second.
Yeah, it's definitely a different scenario this year, not having the divisions. So there still remains a path that they can get where they want to go. They just can't afford to have missteps like they've had lately.
All right, Jeff. Good luck to the Knights tomorrow. Can you plug your stuff? And appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, no problem. Absolutely. I host the AAC report on the Knightline Sports Network that releases each and every week. And of course, the Knightline Sports Network has other programming as well that centers around the UCF Knights. And I also host my own general sports talk show called Jeff Allen Sports Talk. I paid a consultant very much for them. For that name idea, a total of $1, and
you pay too much.
Yes, I did, and I do that show each and every week as well. And of course, I have you guys on my show from time to time as well. And it's great about this world that we live in. That that have made friends with people all over the country. Talking about football and sports, the things that we love. And I know you're going to have Ryan Wallen on your show tonight. He's been on my program, so it's kind of neat how all this how it all connects. It's really cool.
No doubt, in the world we live in, as far as Zoom and StreamYard in this case, for Facebook Live and YouTube, it's kind of crazy stuff. Jeff, man, thank you so much as always. Appreciate you, and we'll beam you back in, I'm sure, before the end of the season. Appreciate you, man.
Sounds good, fellas. Thanks.
All right. Bring in Ryan Wallen, the most patient man in all of sports. Right, Bubba?
Bubba, you muted yourself. There you go.
No, yeah, I muted myself. I was changing the overlay, and I thought Dave was just going to introduce him. But, yeah, Ryan, it's great to have you back on the program. The Owls went down to Annapolis last week, 31-29 losers to Navy in a game that was really kind of back and forth after Navy jumped ahead early. So just talk about that one. And I know you released an article today just talking about that offensive line for the Owls and the way it's coming along pretty nicely.
Yeah, so for sure, that game against Annapolis, against Navy down in Annapolis last week definitely was a little bit of a wake-up call, I think, for Temple. Obviously, I don't think a lot of people thought that Temple was going to go down there and lose that game, especially after the way Navy had performed in their first 3 games of the year. But Temple's defense, for the first time in a long time, it kind of looked suspect coming out of that game. The D-line could just not shed blocks. Coach Cory said after the game that his defensive linemen were playing with their pad level too high, and that's probably the worst thing you can do against a team that runs the option, and their guys are already starting very low to the ground. So that caused a lot of missed tackles. Caused his defensive linemen not being able to shed blocks. You saw Dan Archibong and Ifeanyi Maje come out of that game looking not like NFL prospects, but they looked like first-time starters really for that Temple defensive line. And the linebackers were the two that led the team in tackles with 14 and 11 respectively. But that just shows you that Navy was getting to that second level of the Temple defense. And they were getting that option going again like they typically had done in the past. So that was an ugly game for Temple's defense. The offense, on the other hand, they looked great. Aside from really 1, maybe 2 bad throws from Anthony Russo, he looked really good in that first game. Temple's run game got going. Ray Davis nearly broke the 100-yard mark in the out of the backfield for Temple. They did run for 166 yards against a shorthanded Navy defense. And that was definitely compliments to the offensive line, which was without 2-year starter Adam Klein for that game, who I was told suffered an injury late last week in practice. So they were without one of their starting offensive linemen, veteran offensive linemen, going into that game. They kind of shifted the position group around this offseason, moved one of their guards to a tackle, benched one of their other 2-year starter tackles, actually, put some transfers in as fill-ins on that line. And I think obviously with Rod Carey being a former offensive line coach, it looked like he knew what he was doing and putting that offensive line together this offseason.
Did you guys got off to a slow start in that game, Ryan? And kind of came back and missed a 2-point conversion there at the end, I believe. It was a chance to tie. I believe I'm telling the story of the game, right? Did you feel that the slow start was just from not playing a game yet?
I wouldn't say it was a slow start because the offense, came out and they scored on 5 of their 7 possessions. I believe They scored on all of theirs in the first half. It was just
I thought the guys came from behind in that game. I'm sorry.
They did go down because they got a field goal on what probably should have been a touchdown on the first drive of the game. They did have a couple false start penalties, and then the defense, like I said, just did not come out looking good. Navy did go up 14-3 early. Temple responded with a touchdown. Navy got another touchdown. It was just like that defense just could not get off the field in key downs on 3rd and 4th down against the mids. Obviously, it's very hard when a triple option is running effectively when they're getting to 4th and 1, 3rd and 1 every time to stop a triple option and knowing they're going to probably go for it on 4th down. And Navy actually used the screenplay to bite or burn Temple twice. I believe one was on a 3rd and 14 and the other one was on a 4th and 1. Both ended up being big gains for them and got them into scoring position, which ultimately led to Navy being able to jump out to a lead and that Temple just could not come back from. Like you mentioned, Temple did have a chance to tie it at the end of the game. They went down, scored the touchdown, needed the 2-point conversion to tie the game. The play call that was made apparently came from Rod Carey after he overruled offensive coordinator Micah Removich. And that was probably the worst throw Anthony made of the game, actually, other than possibly the interception he had earlier in the game where he just looked down his receiver the whole time and the Navy linebacker jumped it. But in this case, the 2-point conversion play, he hiked the ball. He looked right to his running back, threw it, who was in tight man coverage, and the ball got batted away right away. Really don't know what he was looking at because even if the running back had caught it, it was not going to be a conversion. He was at the 2-yard line. There was no way he was getting in. So I don't know what Russo was doing with that decision really, but obviously Temple disappointed coming out of the game, but there are some positives, obviously heading into this week against USF, against a team that has struggled defensively, especially defending the run, and obviously has had their offense not look very good this year, aside from maybe last week against ECU. But even then, they were playing catch up the whole game.
Yeah, Ryan. Go ahead, Dave.
I had a quick question for you regarding East Carolina. Since you kind of have a scouting report for us, or we have the game tomorrow at Dowdy-Ficklin Stadium where we can't thankfully have fans, 3,500 to be exact. But what's your thoughts on how can East Carolina? I mean, Temple came close. That was a great game, and I thought you were going to beat them. But anyway, what do you think? How does East Carolina win tomorrow?
Navy's obviously the team that has surprised most people, coming back against Tulane and now beating Temple. So they are off to obviously a 2-0 start in conference, which looks good this year. Obviously, like you guys were just talking about with Jeff, you only have to finish 1 or 2 in the conference to get to that championship game. And Navy's definitely a team that has talent to do so. Like I said, they were shorthanded on defense last week, and they did just enough to hold Temple off. I don't know how long, obviously, Fago is going to be out, how long their backup defensive tackle is. And I believe they had another linebacker that's a starter that was out as well. So I'm not sure how long they're going to be out. But I would say to beat them offensively, you got to put them behind the chains early. And even then, it's tough to beat them just the way, from what I've seen from Dalen Morris at quarterback. He has shown that he is a very decent passer, for a Navy quarterback. And he doesn't do a whole lot in the option game from what I saw last week. A lot of their runs in the option were fullback dive, and then maybe a pitch. It wasn't a whole lot of that read option type look. So I would say if you can maybe predict the play, if as cliche as that sounds, with a triple option, you might have a good shot. And I would obviously, as always, hope to get Navy behind the chains so that you force them to beat you through the air. But like I said, Morris has proven that he is a capable passer, though.
Yeah, like you're saying, Nelson Smith, the big fullback, actually their backup fullback had 120 yards and a couple of touchdowns last Saturday. And Carruthers is a heck of a back as well. So that's undoubtedly the first thing the Pirates will have to stop tomorrow afternoon. But you talk about the defensive struggles. Yeah, if you looked at some of Temple's offensive numbers, 25 first downs, and for a first game, extremely efficient, converting 8 out of 12 on third down.
Yeah, for sure. So, obviously over the past 5-6 years, Temple's been known for its defense. And, I said last week, I believe on the show, that this was the year that I felt like the offense probably was going to be better than the defense, just because of the experience they had, especially at the skill positions. Bubba had mentioned, I wrote the article about the O-line, which definitely looks like it has the potential to be great and has several pros on it. But obviously, again, it was against a shorthanded Navy team. I'm going to look forward to seeing how they perform against USF tomorrow. Obviously, USF might not be the best test of measure as well for that defense or that offense, because, again, it's USF and they're currently sitting at 1-3, and their only win is against the Citadel. So obviously, I don't know how that will play into it, but obviously that's a game where Temple hopefully will bounce back, not only on the on the defensive side of the ball, but they could put up some big numbers offensively as well against the Bulls. And obviously the Bulls' pass defense is their strength, probably. It might not have looked it last week, obviously, with Holton Ehlers throwing all over them, but there were some chunk plays in there that obviously played into that score being as inflated as it was. So Temple obviously has the momentum going on the offensive side of the ball. Defense, I'm hoping that we see the return of that good interior D-line play that they had last year with Dan Archibong and Ifeanyi Maije. This will obviously be the first time we actually really get to see the defensive ends and see what they can do this year in pressuring a quarterback in Jordan McLeod. And then I want to see what the secondary can do this week as well, because I believe Rod Carey's quote from this past week's media conference, I believe someone asked him, what did he learn about what his secondary could do this year? And I believe his exact quote was nothing. So obviously that was because Navy did not throw the ball but 2 times, and they were both screen plays against the Owls last week.
Going to be, I'll tell you what, interesting thing. Good luck to you guys this week. By the way, Ryan, before we let you go, how can people find your work? And as always, thanks so much for the visit again this week.
Of course, guys, and you can find my stuff at Ryan Wallen 247, or you can follow all our content on at owlsdaily.com or temple.247sports.com. We are the only Temple outlet that posts daily content of football, basketball year round.
All right, look forward to it, and good luck to the Owls tomorrow.
Awesome. Thanks, guys, for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Ryan. Thanks, Brian, as always. All right, so another patient guy with us, Bubba. One of our favorite guests is back.
Yeah, Marshall looking to remain undefeated tomorrow as they travel down to Ruston to take on La Tech. The Bulldogs are 3-1, and we appreciate Keith Morehouse from WSAZ in Huntington rejoining the program. Keith, welcome in.
Hey, thank you guys for having me, man. How's everybody?
Great. One question I have for you is, have you heard anything? We always ask you about the Marshall East Carolina game being rescheduled.
Yeah, I was down there a couple weeks ago. I told you guys I was heading down, and all the ECU people are telling me they're still trying to make it happen. I haven't talked to Mike Hamrick up at Marshall in a week or so, but with Conference USA pushing its championship game back to the 19th, I believe, that gives a little wiggle room in the early part of December to maybe make that happen. I know they still want to do it, so I wouldn't cross that one off the list just yet. I think they're still trying to make that one happen.
And Keith, can you actually call the folks at ESPN with your contacts and get game day down there? Oh,
I know. Game day's a little different animal this year, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's interesting with the way this year's played out. I mean, we've talked about it before, guys, how big a deal it is for ECU and how big a deal it is for Marshall. And as we get closer to that date in November, it starts to ramp up a little bit, and so everybody wants that one to happen, and I just hope it does for both schools, both programs, fan bases. So I'm holding out hope that, and this year, a lot of coaches and athletic directors have been flexible and have had to ad lib, and they've done a nice job at it. So here's hoping they can make that one go.
Yeah, Dave, you bring up College Game Day. November 14th is a Saturday, so it will be very interesting. Not that, obviously, even if that wasn't a Saturday, it wouldn't prohibit something like this, of course, but I would certainly expect to see something on College Game Day here in a few weeks.
Yeah, I think what they would do also, guys, is even if they don't, it would definitely be hard to have that program in a setting like that. It's kind of obviously it's a somber anniversary, and you have to kind of be careful with the tone and the tenor of what you do. But I would certainly expect them to acknowledge it. They may do a piece, of course, on the 50th. And as I mentioned to you guys, I was down there a couple of weeks ago and talked to 3 of the ECU players who played in that final game. And I mean, it was really they were really heartfelt, and they opened up to me, and it was emotional just seeing those guys and watching what they went through and seeing in their mind, remembering the faces across the line of scrimmage from them. And part of that hour special that I'm putting together up here. So they were great, treated me so nice, and as everyone at ECU does. And so, yeah, I just, it'll get its acknowledgement. I just don't know in what form or format just yet.
Keith, it was really touching for me. One of the hardest parts of ever doing this show is I was doing an interview. We do 50 Pirates in 50 days, the first round of that 2 years ago. And I'll never forget the first time I talked to John Casaza, and he said, the only thing wrong is that we won. And when he said that, it just really, he said, I wish they had gone out as winners. And that just really hurt me when he said that.
Yeah, it really does make you think about what they went through. And I talked to Rusty Scales, Richard Peeler, and Jim Creech. All 3 of those guys were Pirates back then, and they all had different memories. Rusty talked about how he played against Marshall's quarterback Ted Shoebridge when they were in high school in New Jersey, and they had a talk after the game. And Richard, they all were just expressing the sentiment, and they got together that night. I think we've talked about this a little bit at 2 a.m. at the auditorium to have a memorial service. That shows you how classy and just how much they wanted to help a little bit in any way possible to get through that. And the overwhelming message I got is, they always remember that game, and they always those 2 schools have a special kinship because of it. And so we're 50 years later, and these guys still recall it as if it was yesterday. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, a very close family friend of ours is John Casaza. In addition to John, Greg Burke, who was a part of that team as well. He was, I believe, not suited up that day, but he was just talking how surreal it was, and just knowing that they had shaken hands with those guys just a few hours earlier. Yeah,
I say, Bubba, I remember watching there's an end clip after the game, and Sonny Randall, former NFL star, we've talked about Sonny. I did the games up, on ESPN Plus with Sonny for 9 years. He was my color analyst, and he was, of course, an assistant coach on that team, and then became, the coach at ECU. And so all the ties and the similarities and the coincidences are really striking. And so, yeah, I think anytime you get together and discuss it, you find out something else you didn't know before. And so it was really profound experience to be down there and to be able to include them in this thing we're working on. So I'm very glad and indebted to those guys for sharing their memories with me that day.
Yeah, and I think without being there and being a part of it, just kind of putting myself in those guys' shoes, knowing they played, those guys from the Thunder and Herd that passed away that day in the crash, I would imagine it made them realize their own mortality, and kind of when you're in your 20s, kind of staring death in the face like that and thinking that could have easily been us.
It's a great point. And Jim Creech, in fact, brought that up. He said, like you say, they went into the night to celebrate, as college kids do. And then, the way that night turned out was awful for him. And he said, it does make you appreciate life. And you, when you're faced with that kind of mortality, when you don't think you're going to be at 20 years old, it changes your perspective. And for all those guys, it has for their whole lives. So it's a lesson for all of us, maybe not to take things for granted. And I think about that a lot. I think about that when we interview, young Marshall players or East Carolina players, and think, man, these guys would be the same age as those young guys who lost their lives, and the boosters and the fans that were on the trip as well, and the coaches and personnel. So it's just a time to reflect. And to me, this time of the year, it hits pretty hard, and it'll be even more pronounced because it's the 50th anniversary this year.
And Keith, as you know, hopefully you can help us. We're going to do something special to honor Marshall and the Thundering Herd in that game closer to the time. So we'll obviously keep in touch, and obviously it's going to be tough for us too, as we love Marshall. And obviously, I know when we get on the field, it's a little bit different. But before and after the game, it's like you said, a special kinship is the best way to do it. Want to talk about the game, obviously with Louisiana Tech, former East Carolina coach Skip Holtz there. Marshall, I'll tell you one thing. I was telling the guys, I want to get your take because you follow the program extremely close. This is one of the best Marshall teams I've seen in a long, long time.
I think you're right. And you know, guys, when you see a team and sometimes you just realize, hey, this team has it, whatever it is. Now, they're only 3 games into the year, and nobody's, projecting any championships yet. But to me, the fact that they're just more cohesive than they seem to have better team chemistry and unity. They seem to have rallied around this freshman quarterback. And I just see a different kind of mentality with that team, like to go on the road last week and jump on Western Kentucky really quickly. Maybe another previous Marshall team would have let that lead slip away, or maybe wouldn't have gone as focused. And that's the one thing I notice about him. Funny, we talk about great players, and I was just down in Grayson, Kentucky, which is only 25 minutes from us across the state line. And Chad Pennington, of course, former Marshall great and New York Jet, is coaching a football team in Lexington now. They're 5-0. So I went down there to do a live shot for our 6 o'clock, and I asked Chad on camera about what he's noticed about the Marshall team, and he said just what you said. He goes, I see a unity there. I see guys that have each other's backs, and that's huge in football. If you don't, it's such a team game, and if you're not all in on it, then you're not going to see those results. So I thought that was interesting that Chad had that same observation, from a couple hours away, just watching them on TV this year.
You talk about Wells, the quarterback, and how well he's performed up to this point. But Brendan Knox is a guy that's really caught my attention. He, the most recent game against Western Kentucky, a 38-14 victory, he ran for over 100 yards and 3 touchdowns, and he got the hurt on the board right off the bat in the first minute.
Yeah, but he's quite a talent. Was last year Conference USA Player of the Year. Real mature kid. Doesn't care about the accolades and the individual stuff. He just wants to be a team guy. And they've got a backup, Sheldon Evans, that comes in and runs pretty well and can give him, some plays off, which, of course, preserves his legs and allows him to run some different guys in. So I think he sort of embodies what that team's about in terms of, hey, this is a team game. Nobody's out there, pounding their own chest. It's about the result. And they've had good results thus far. And he's probably the guy on that team that I think of as the leader, especially on offense.
What are you seeing from this Louisiana Tech ball club that sticks out to you that the Herd needs to watch out for?
Well, they've got some great skill players, and they've got a lot of team speed. I mean, you look at their, Luke Anthony's their quarterback, their running back, Justin Henderson, really good player. He was here last year, and Marshall won that game up in Huntington 31-10, but they had 4 starters out, I believe, for disciplinary reasons before that game. And but this will be Marshall's first trip to Ruston, guys. So as you guys know, it's a long trip out there to Louisiana. And so it'll be a different environment. We'll see how Marshall handles that. It's the first time they've flown this year. They bust to Western. And so it's going to be a challenge. I mean, I know we see the odds makers, and they got Marshall as a 10 to 14-point favorite. I'm not sure. Marshall has to be careful because, first of all, as you guys know, Skip Holtz knows how to win. He certainly knows how to coach. And they've got some talent at receiver with, Smoke Harris. He's a guy that can run. And one thing I will say about Marshall's defense, they do run to the ball well. So I think it'll be an interesting matchup, the skill players for Louisiana Tech against Marshall's defense, which is pretty speedy on the back end too.
Yeah, no, it'll be a good game.
I think so. Yeah, for sure.
And Keith, as far as you were talking about the championship game being moved, how are things there with Marshall? Do people feel? I know it's early on the season, but do you think expectations, I guess, are high that you will make the championship game? And I know it's still early, but how do you feel?
Yeah, I think people are pretty, jacked up about what they've seen so far. And, coming into this season was a little bit of a question mark as Marshall's starting quarterback from a year ago left the program. But having seen what they've seen and having seen, Marshall come out and really play well and beat Appalachian and, beat Eastern Kentucky in the opener 59-0. I think people would like to see that ECU game, that Boise State game, that Pitt game. All three of those games are out. So I think they'd like to see, hey, how would they fare against, some really, really good competition at that level. And so whether we see it down the road this year or not, but yeah, I think to answer your question, they've been pleasantly surprised and they want to see more football, in this COVID season as opposed to less. So I think that's the overriding thought for the fan base.
I think we're staring a Marshall UAB conference championship game. Right,
UAB's awfully good. That would not surprise me a bit. Not at all.
Two great teams, and certainly being a fan of college football, you definitely want to have two great teams like that, and in the conference championship for sure. Keith, how can people find your work? We appreciate your patience tonight. It's been a strange beginning of the show, but it's not how you start, it's how you finish, right?
That's what they say. That's right. Hey, thanks so much, Dave. Just at Keith Morehouse on Twitter, KeithMorehouse, and we're at WSAZ.com is our website. And as I get that show more and more close to being finished, I'll make sure that I send you guys a link and we'll see if we get that thing out there, because it's got a lot of, especially in the early part of it, a lot of East Carolina talk in there for obvious reasons. So working on that, and just looking forward to more football this year, guys.
By the way, one final quick question: did you have any barbecue when you were in Greenville?
I did. The famous place was closed. It was a Monday. I was down there on Monday and Tuesday. So I went to, was it Sam's? Does that sound right?
Well, Bees is probably the place you're referring to.
Bees was the one that was closed. Sam Jones. Yeah, that was good. Really good.
All right.
Enjoyed it.
So
yep.
That was the next best one because Bees was closed. Yeah.
There you go. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, and look forward to having you back on. And definitely we'll have you sometime around that anniversary. And thanks so much as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys for your interest. And any way I can help you around the 14th, just let me know.
All right. Thanks, Keith. Appreciate it a lot, man.
Yep.
Have a good night. All right, guys. Inside Slant, obviously, as we're looking at always college football, usually the night before, even sometimes the day of. And by the way, Kyle, I want to get your opinion here really fast before we go. Who's going to be the starting quarterback tomorrow in East Carolina's game against Navy?
Well, I mean, from everything I hear, Holton's not playing, right? So it's going to be Garcia.
That's what I'm assuming. So, once you get your take on that.
Have we confirmed Holton's out?
I mean, I haven't heard. I was going to ask you guys before we go.
Bubba, did you get a chance to hear Morgan on 1250?
I didn't get a chance to hear that this afternoon.
So, yeah.
I didn't get a chance to hear that yet. I heard Rick Smith in the 4:00 hour. I didn't get a chance to hear that interview. I'll have to listen to it before I was going to get you guys your take. But I tell you what.
If anybody should know if he's playing, it should be his dad. So I don't know if that information's out there or not. But if it is, somebody let us know in the comments below. But if Holton's, I know Morgan's not going to play. But if Holton's not going to play, it'll be Garcia. There's no question about that. So all right, it'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow. Maybe Garcia can go out there and if he does start and execute the offense, not make any mistakes, and take advantage of his athletic ability and his big arm and make some plays for us.
And maybe he will be one of the kids being so young, he won't know any difference of all the past struggles with Navy. Maybe that's a good thing.
Well, I don't know that the offense has been the problem most of those years. It's been the defense, but I get what you're saying. I'm just saying that, in other words, we're going to have to, if we're going to beat Navy, we're going to have to score a lot of points, is my point. Well, we'll see. All right. Well, great show, guys, as always. And Bubba, appreciate you for everything. And do you have any final thoughts before we go?
I just wanted to show folks that I'm in the witness protection program.
I was getting ready to ask you. I was getting ready to ask you that. You beat me to it.
Yeah,
I didn't know if Stacy. I'll ask Stacy. Has he done anything wrong?
I'm sure there's something. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, just a moment ago when Kyle asked me that question, the reason I didn't unmute myself and respond is because Stacy was in the middle of talking about this loud. So,
Talking about what? She was talking about what?
I don't recall what she was saying. She was messing in the fridge, and
I got you.
And now Reese is entering the room. So
Well, that's okay.
there's not a good place to broadcast from in my house. So
That's all right. It is what it is. Hey, look, I don't even have a face anymore. I'm just a scary ghost there at the bottom.
Yeah,
exactly. So we'll get your face back. And by the way, guys, I wish I could see the game with you guys tomorrow, but one way or another, we'll actually, I think, find a way to win. I feel confident about the game until I can't, and so
as long
we'll
as you feel confident, Dave.
Hey,
that's
Dave,
all that matters.
Dave, at least you'll be able to see the game as you'll be representing the Sports Objective from high atop Dowdy Ficklin Stadium in Town Bank Tower.
That's right.
Yeah, I'll eat and Kyle, I'll eat the box lunch for you. They're giving us a box lunch tomorrow, so I'll eat that for you tomorrow.
Well, I know that's probably why you're going. It's a free lunch, but 12 o'clock ESPN2 for everybody who doesn't have a media pass or you're not in the upper echelon of the Pirate Club and got to be one of the 3,500 going in. So us normal Pirate Club folk and media members who don't have a pass will be watching on ESPN2, 12 noon tomorrow. And, here's what it is.
Yeah, that's hysterical, Kyle.
Yeah, we might as well go ahead and put this show to bed, as Dave would say, before.
Yeah, it needs
before,
to.
Before Dave dies.
It should have went to bed about an hour and a half ago.
Well, we've only been on the air an hour and 16 minutes, but I get your point. All right, guys. Well, we're gonna get out of here, and I've had so much fun with you. I've had fun with you guys. Thanks to all our great guests. Let's get a win tomorrow. Dowdy Ficklin Stadium at Bagwell Field against Navy. Until next time, you've been watching the Inside Slant, our look at college football around the nation, and right here on the Sports Objective. And as always, good night, everybody, and go Pirates!